Ever since William of Normandy boldly conquered England in 1066, the Norman kings of the realm had sought to solidify their power over all of Britain. They met a particularly brave and stubborn foe in the Welsh, who steadfastly refused to submit to any English monarch. Tapestries and medieval illuminations tell of the line of kings who for more than 200 years tried without success to bring Wales into the English nation. They tell many stories of pitched battles and fierce struggle. And they tell of the coming of Edward I, a king of power and vision. Edward saw that the key to victory in hostile Wales lay in English castles, manned by English troops and controlled by loyal barons, which is why, on March the 27th, 1283, King Edward invested Kevin Lestrange as Lord of Aberwyvern in agriculturally rich but rebellious northwest Wales. The king's first charge to Lord Kevin: build a castle there, the finest that modern engineering could produce.
There never really was a place called Aberwyvern, or a baron called Lord Kevin Lestrange. I made them up. But the rest of the story is quite true. And here's the proof. This is the Castle Conway, built some 700 years ago. I first saw the Welsh castles on summer holidays with my parents. I found them big, dark, and mysterious. I remember peeking into all their murky chambers, running along the passages and racing up every spiral staircase, 2 steps ahead of my sister. She remembers it slightly differently. When I grew older, I often thought of those childhood experiences and romantic visions. But eventually, I began asking some basic questions. How were these castles built, and why? So I decided to find out. I returned to Wales to visit a few of my old haunts and a number of new ones. But this time, when I peeked into those darkened chambers and raced sisterless up to the tops of the towers, I was inventing my own imaginary castle, which I called Aberwyvern. As the story of my castle unfolds, we'll be visiting some of the real castles it's based on and finding out something about the people who lived in and around them. Sharing my interest in history and architecture is Sarah Bullen, who will help me tell the story.
Hello, David.
Hello, Sarah. Sarah, what interests you most about castles?
Actually, I'm more interested in the people, what they were like, how they lived, how and why they were different from us.
And they were different, weren't they?
Oh, yes. Most of the people were peasants. They were tied to the land they were born on, and they never moved more than a few miles away from their homes. They were totally controlled by and dependent upon the lord of the manor. They couldn't count on anything. For instance, the land providing enough to live on. They might find themselves in political or military disputes. Diseases of all kinds were a continual threat, and there were few known cures. But for everyone, rich and poor, survival was the all-consuming effort. If you had lived in the Middle Ages and were fortunate enough to survive birth and childhood, you pretty much knew what you were expected to do for the rest of your life. And only if you were exceptionally bright and industrious could you hope to rise beyond your social origins. After all, you probably couldn't even afford to marry unless you had an inheritance of some sort. And whoever you were, the chances were you would die young. The most important things in life were faith in God and personal obligations. To the church, to the king, perhaps to a guild, and of course to the local lord, such as your Kevin Lestrange.
Who, as you'll remember, had just been made Lord of Aberwyvern and was setting sail for his new fiefdom in Wales.
We sailed to the mouth of the River Wyvern. I met there with Master James of Barrington, the famous engineer who was already at work on other castles for the king in Wales and Scotland. I hope he proves worth his fee of 3 shillings a day, an unprecedented sum.
I trust you had a pleasant journey, Lord Kevin.
Is the journey from London ever a pleasant one?
Hardly, I dare say. Shall we begin, my lord?
It is critical that we be able to command all the surrounding land and control traffic and commerce through the area.
After surveying the entire area, my lord, I've decided that the outcrop of rock extending into the water provides the best natural defense. I'm sure a military strategist of your skill will agree.
Right, sir.
And, of course, the river provides an obvious escape route, should one ever prove necessary.
Let us hope to God it does not.
At the foot of the outcrop over there, we will lay out the town.
And that will provide the first ring of the castle's defense? I am very pleased, Master James.
Thank you, my lord.
His Majesty has impressed upon me the urgency of this project. After all, we are in hostile territory.
Carpenters are already building workshops and barracks. And I must say, my lord, the protection of your soldiers provides great comfort indeed.
A necessary precaution. We know the Welsh are watching us.
Satisfied with the progress, Kevin returned home and reported to his king.
Since your last visit, I have laid out the boundaries of the town, which the diggers are trenching so we may build a wall.
Master James, what sufficed in King Henry's time...
With due respect, my lord, I have traveled throughout Europe and the Holy Land, studying the great military architecture. Your castle will be the strongest yet seen in the kingdom.
I am glad to hear it.
It is laid out in defensive rings. The outer curtain wall will measure 300 feet on each of its sides, and will be defended by towers and gatehouses. If by any chance, an extremely unlikely one, the attackers succeed in penetrating this area, they will be thwarted by the inner curtain wall, 12 feet thick and 35 feet high, with 50-foot high towers. An intruder would virtually have to fly to get in.
That should hold against Prince David and his Welsh rebels.
In the center of the inner ward, we have the living quarters for yourself and Lady Catherine, your children and servants.
My wife is a particular sort of woman. She will not relish living in this godforsaken outpost. See that you make her quarters as pleasing as possible.
You may have my assurance of that, my lord. Over here will be the barracks for the soldiers, here the great hall and kitchen and storerooms, and here in the safest part of the castle will be the well.
The castle is only as safe as its water supply.
And the town, it will be a simple grid of streets and blocks to be further divided into lots.
Very good. But the town defenses?
The 3 entrances in the town wall will be fortified with double-towered gatehouses, which would prove quite effective.
Most impressive. But how fast can the project be built?
The stone is being quarried and loaded on ships, some of which have already set sail. But when the stone arrives, to maintain the pace of construction His Majesty demands, I simply must have more workers.
And so you shall, Master James.
Lord Kevin sent constables to several English cities to find the multitude of workers Master James required. Over 500 diggers were forced to march all the way from Lincolnshire. Some local officials grumbled, since they had building projects of their own to complete. But Lord Kevin's representatives spoke in the name of King Edward himself. One who was pleased to come was the blacksmith, Andrew, from the town of Chester.
There are already many skilled smiths in Chester, so the call for work in Aberwyvern struck me as a fine opportunity. And with Lord Kevin's terms, I become a master straight away without paying any guild fee. It's a chance to establish myself in the new town, build a house and start a family.
My Lord Kevin, construction on Aberwyvern Castle is at its height. There are now 3,000 workers on the site, and we have finally secured sufficient master craftsmen to oversee them. In mid-July this year of our Lord 1284, we began the outer curtain and the town wall foundation. As I explained to you when we last met, the two stone faces are bound with mortar made of sand and lime. And as the wall grows, the space in between is filled with rubble. Materials are carried up the walls on scaffolding supported by put logs set in holes in the walls themselves. We find this the most efficient means of construction. We use hoists and pulleys to lift lighter materials and tools. You understand, sir, that the windows near the bottom of the walls and towers must be small enough so that an enemy soldier cannot climb through. All the windows will be protected by iron grills and can be closed off by wooden shutters on the inside. In your living quarters, your gracious Lady Catherine will be pleased to note that each window will be fitted with glass. Of course, the tops of the walls will be crenelated with embrasures and merlons. Each merlon will be capped by 3 fearsome-looking finials. I have provided for arrow loops in the merlons for your archers. With a wedge-shaped recess cut out of the stone, the archer may aim anywhere across his field of vision without exposing himself to the attackers. One of the many refinements that adds up to the greatest castle I or any other Englishman has ever built.
When the weather turned cold, the partially completed walls were covered with straw and dung to keep the new mortar from freezing and cracking. And so protected, the castle sat through the winter. It's important to remember that the medieval castle is really a military machine, and every part has a specific function. For instance, crenellations like these at Carnarvon aren't for decoration. As you saw in my imaginary castle at Aberwyvern, they had a practical and deadly purpose.
Just like today, I suppose the military minds of the time were constantly trying to come up with improvements.
Sure. Look at these advanced arrow loops, arranged in the wall so that an archer could shoot in 2 directions from the same position. And the development of the arrow loop in the first place was certainly an improvement over having to expose yourself to the enemy's fire in order to shoot your own